kind of runs the show regarding that. They dredged up. They try to look for, now it's a much more precise science now than it was in the past. They try to find the best match for beach sand and dredge it up and bring it up and dump it on the beach where they need it. In the past, when they kind of commercialized beaches in the area, just trying to make them longer for resorts and things in the Atlantic north of Melbourne, it was less precise. They kind of put a lot of like roundup shells, things like that. We see less turtle nesting, whether that's a cause or not. We see less turtle nesting in those areas. That sand is a whole different type. Turtles can be finicky. If they start digging, they can be, interrupted by a person, an animal, or if they don't like the sand, they'll move on a lot of times. So it's a much more precise science now. They try to find a good match for sand, and throughout Archie Carr Refuge, they put about upwards of 10,000 plugs of sea oats, because sea oats are kind of our primary anti-erosion kind of dune kind of holding the dune together there. So sea oats, they have a very extensive vertical and horizontal like root system and rhizome system. So they help kind of hold all that sand. So you can see there with high tide, it's kind of eating away the dune, but it's kind of able to maintain there with the sea oats. So those are baby sea oats, and we'll see we have a lot higher in a lot of other places.
Got a question?
Yeah, go ahead. Oh, good.
Oh,
Sorry.
sorry. And this is weird, but you said they come back where they're born. So after some of the storms, the whole beach is pretty much wiped out. So if they're coming back to lay their eggs and they just have a wall, there's nothing for them to come up and do they go back out or do they walk along? What do they do when that happens?
If they're interrupted, if they do, it's what we call false crawl. They'll go out in the water, and sometimes you'll be able to see them, but we generally believe they kind of travel a little bit, then come back up. That's one of the concerns with commercialization along the beach. We have where they put seawalls up, and that creates, rather than a dune the turtle can climb up, it's a straight wall that it hits. That's one of the things that we keep track of is there's some man-made structure that the sea turtle ran into that prevented it from nesting or made it turn around. And I'll get a little bit more into that site fidelity a little bit later. Sea oats, so they are important. I'm not going to get too into the hard science here, but on Melbourne Beach back in 2000, they did some research and found 23% of our loggerhead nests had, or found it used in the study, had been invaded by sea oat roots or rhizomes. We will see in nests that don't fare so well, you'll see sometimes eggs that have been pervaded and broken into by sea oat roots. But also at the same time, we know that those sea oats are taking nourishment from the turtle eggs. So it's not all bad when you have a nest that is unsuccessful, a nest that gets too hot and interrupted by predators, because that is still nourishing the dune. It's nourishing a lot of the plants in the dune. We can see that with some stable isotope analysis. I'm not going to get into too much, but basically nitrogen, we're seeing similar proportions of an isotope of nitrogen that we see in the sea turtles that we're seeing that in plants, the plants that are pervading the sea turtle nest. So they are taking up that nitrogen and using it. So we do see it correlating with higher nest density areas. Some of the other common plants we have on the dune that help reinforce it are sea grape. So you can see it right here, kind of behind the sea oats there. There's the fruit right there. They help reinforce the dune as well as sea purslane. We actually have one of those up there. So that's something you'll commonly see along with the sea oats as well. There is your picture of the flower of railroad vine that we needed earlier. Railroad vine, that's a relative of the, or it's in the morning glory family, a relative of beach morning glory. The main difference is the beach morning glory has like a white flower. But yeah, it's very leggy, creates long runners, and we see that reinforce the dune as well. And dune daisies or beach sunflower as well. We have one of those up there. Then, this kind of gets more into the sea turtle life history. Sargassum, you can see it here deposited onto the beach. It's a brown seaweed. It gets brought and left up there by high tides. It has little bubbles on it, little nematocysts that help it float and stay on the top of the water. So you can kind of see there where it's kind of pervading along maybe a current or something. Let's see. So it can stretch for miles, and I'm going to go into that in just a second here when we start to talk about sea turtles and their sea turtle life cycle. Now this is a nice little animation made by a friend of mine. We'll talk about it later. They start here at the home beach, coming from Central Florida. They're born there. We have them going out to the Sargasso Sea, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then we have a lot of mystery we'll talk about here, but we see some other kind of rookeries. This is the Azores, Azore Islands. We go here past the Canary Islands and into Cape Verde Islands. All those places are rookeries where we'll see smaller sea turtles. And then as they grow, we'll start to see them traveling along the Keys and into the Gulf of Mexico here. So, the life of sea turtles. Nests take about 45 to 60 days to incubate. What we'll do is nests that we're monitoring, they usually take a few days. They give us some cues. There's depression formed as turtles start to hatch. Once turtles hatch, it takes several days for all of them to get out. We have the strong first hatchers, ones on top coming out first. It takes a little bit of time for the other ones to get up. It's kind of a group effort as well. They usually emerge pre-dawn, and what they do is they head for the brightest point on the horizon, which is the sky meeting over the ocean. Now, that's where things like artificial lights come into play. Actually, back to sea grapes. Sea grapes are nice because they grow quickly and tall. Sea grapes are actually, there's restrictions on how much you can trim them in certain parts of Florida because they do work well as artificial light blocks so that you don't have lights from houses, resorts, things like that, that are coming onto the beach that could trick the baby sea turtles, the hatchlings, and disorient them. So they head for the ocean. Let's see. Yeah. All right, here this works. So this is an emergence happening at like 1 or 2 in the morning. This is what it looked like when there's a large amount of the large emergence. So there's a bunch of baby sea turtles. You can see they were kind of headed every which way. They tend to kind of orient themselves overall to go in the right direction. But that's like a very lucky thing to see because when you're talking about you're there the moment that happens, the day that it happens on a beach, a 15-mile stretch that you're walking. It's a pretty special thing.
Question?
Yeah, go ahead.
So in birds, there's an issue of imprinting. If you're by eggs hatching, if you're a human looking at a bird and not giving it back to the mother or what have you, do sea turtles have those same issues?
Well, if you think about it, reptiles have a very brief relationship with their parents. Their mother lays the eggs and then never again seen. So there isn't really any family structure imprinting to be had with sea turtles. So yes, that isn't really a concern. They kind of just go about their business and ignoring you. And this is kind of a nice video caught that was at a. So sorry to flip sideways, but this is a leatherback sea turtle hatchling, kind of at dawn, walking into the ocean. So that's a pretty special video to be able to catch as well. Okay. With the sheer volume of nests that we have, because if we have 15, 20,000 nests, we're talking 80 to 100 eggs per nest. That's 1.5 million eggs that we're having hatching. So here are some cool little abnormalities. On the very left, we have a leucistic turtle. So that's a shortage of pigmentation in the skin. So we see that bluing and kind of whitening of the skin. Then we have some kind of a double embryo there in that second egg. And then you kind of see what the result of a double embryo can be there. You have one sea turtle that's taken greater advantage of the yolk sac. So you have kind of a robust hatchling, and then you have maybe a less so or a malnourished hatchling on the other side. You never really are going to see, if you think about it, you've never seen a picture of an adult sea turtle that's white like that. That's because that's a severe disadvantage. That's going to stick out for any type of predator. And they'll be able to catch it, see it more clearly, whether from below or above, walking on the beach, anything like that. That's another helpful thing when they do emerge pre-dawn is they have to deal with less predators. So you don't have as many birds flying about when they come out at night. When it becomes morning, then you have all the birds, you have ghost crabs, you have everything kind of going after these little packs of protein. And they're not very quick, so it's pretty easy pickings there. Let's see. Okay, so so once the turtles make it out to the water, if they can make it past all the fish that are predating them once they get into the water, we see them kind of enter this area that's Sargasso Sea. It's a big clumps, big stretches of sargassum that's created by the North Atlantic Gyre. You can kind of see the streams around that. They kind of create that eddy. That's where we have all this sargassum collected. Dr. Mansfield, who is in charge of our program and one of our PhD students, studied that kind of age and a little older of hatchlings or sea turtles. This is kind of what you see out there. There's these big flats of sargassum. You have plenty of things for them to eat out there, as well as protection from predators. They can hide in those flats of sargassum and not have to worry as much about fish being able to pick them out and see them, or birds or anything like that. We have, let's see, the top two pictures are little hawksbill turtles, and that center picture, I think it's loggerheads, but it's a little hard to tell with the little guy. We do see sargassum mats elsewhere as well. That's just the biggest one. Go ahead.
Is that typically standard for all of the types of babies? Like, do they all kind of congregate on
the ones that we see in off the coast of Florida and things like that in our region, that's where we tend to see them kind of go from hatching. They make it past the Gulf. If they can make it through the Gulf Stream, kind of get to that area. Okay, then we enter into a phase that we don't really know a lot about. It's called the lost. It's considered the lost years. Dr. Kate Mansfield, who is the head of my program, is kind of the world authority on this, which is very cool. So we get to hear about this more than a lot of other people do. Let's see. So you can see that guy has a little solar satellite tag on his back. That's currently kind of, and in the past, what she's tried to do. We're trying to discover better ways to do that so we can track these little guys. There's some on that they caught. As you can see how well that little hawksbill hides in that sargassum. So they, it takes some spotting to bring them on. And then this little guy who's got a little bit of curing with his satellite tag here on the right. So, Dr. Mansfield, what she kind of looks into is she's trying to have these satellite tags last longer on sea turtles, on the growing sea turtles. The problem is they're growing quickly, relatively quickly for sea turtles. Their scoops on the carapace are composed of keratin, like our fingernails. So when you put this tag on, as the turtle grows, the scoops shed, and then you have that satellite tag pop right off. So she was having trouble trying to figure out things. She thought of her and a colleague thought of I'm going to speed it up a little bit here. talked to her nail salon person, recommended a clear acrylic layer to kind of help it seal and stick better. And that's what she tried. We're seeing a lot better results with those. They're staying on longer. Let's see. Okay, getting into adolescence here a little bit. This is when they're kind of a few years old. We work twice a month on the Indian River Lagoon here. So that is just south of the Sebastian Inlet. That's right off Melbourne. So we're catching kind of juvenile greens and subadult loggerheads there. It's kind of a perfect place for these young greens to be because at its deepest points, it's about 6 meters. That's also kind of a level where sun stops to be able to reach. So we see a lot of seagrasses there that if it was any deeper, we might not see them in some of the parts. And the greens being herbivorous, these are some of the seagrasses, shoal grasses are some of the things that they consume. Then when we get to be adults, they return to the home beach. They show what has been mentioned here, so the high site fidelity in the region, return to the region where they were born. Go ahead.
How many years before they become adult?
We believe we do it by, we judge adulthood kind of by a certain length of carapace, but we believe it's about 25 to 30 years. There is some, I have right here a sea turtle humerus. One of the ways they're trying to start aging turtles is by doing stable isotope analysis of the inside of a humerus, getting a kind of a core of that, but of course that's limited by the fact that the turtle has to be dead. So we think after about 25 to 30 years, they come back, they return to the general area, they tend to return to the general area of where they were born. Go ahead.
Which species is that skull of?
Green sea turtle. And then this is just, I'll go quickly a little bit through what we do. We have a field station in Melbourne. So all our people work there 3 days a week during the, March 1st through October 31st or during the summer, doing morning surveys. Morning survey, we come out at dawn. Here's the crawls of the 3 different species we have on the far left there. We have the leatherback, the kind of sinusoidal, huge, wide track. In the middle, we have a loggerhead. It's little alternating commas. They're the only turtle that kind of walks in an alternating pattern. The other two kind of use both flippers at the same time. And then on the right, we have the green sea turtle, which the crawl has recently been described to me as like dry lasagna. At night, so that's morning survey. At night then, generally 9 p.m., 10 p.m. till 2 or 3 a.m., we'll go out and we'll mark turtle nests, and which means we'll kind of determine where the eggs are as we watch them lay. We'll take morphometrics like measurements on the turtle, take samples, and then we'll mark on the beach and in our records where that nest is. Then other turtles we'll just kind of tag and get information on. We start checking, we start checking at 45 days after the nest that we're marking, after they've been laid. We'll start checking them. We'll see kind of, that's a big cue for emergence there on the left. That's a perfect little, couldn't get any better. All the sea turtles came out, went in the right direction, nobody's straying off, and a lot of them emerged at once. So hopefully there are a lot that were able to make it. We'll check for kind of success of the nest, which depends on some of the factors I mentioned earlier, how high it is up on the beach, if it was predated upon by any kind of predator. Generally, it's a general 65% is like a success rate of nests. And so they lay a lot of eggs, but a lot of them don't make it. The other thing that we're able to do is we get a few a year of satellite tags for. Okay, so let's see. This is kind of what we'll get from a satellite tag on an adult male green turtle. So we see all these little points when it gets close to the surface, where it kind of pings off the satellite. We can see its movement. It's probably traveling up and down, looking to mate with females, kind of staying a little bit off the coast there. And they'll do this throughout the season. there's some pictures. There is kind of a larger scale, what I was mentioning earlier about the satellite tags, epoxy kind of cured. It takes a few hours to do, and then we're able to lay them or let them go. The only way you can tell a green sea turtle by glance from females is they have that long tail. So you can see the picture of the long tail there, and then the one on its carapace there, you can see its tail curled over. So the females have very short tail, just like kind of the vent and then the tail, cloaca then tail, and then males have like longer longer tail. And this is the last thing I'll go over. So how do we get males? Because like I said, females are going to be the only ones that reach shore. Males are never coming into shore. The only way we get them is while they're mating with females. So on the left there, we have them out kind of 50, 100 yards out at sea. They kind of passively float while they mate. The males kind of have little claws that hook into the front of the carapace of the females. They'll kind of passively float along while they're mating, so they're subject to the tides. Sometimes we're able to get the tides to push them in close enough to where they're ashore, and sometimes then we are able to. So if we see that, stop and watch. Then, because it's very rare occurrence to be able to get it's a very rare occurrence to be able to get a male mating pair to kind of land like that, and then we hope that the tide then can knock the male off of the female and kind of flip him over on his back. If so, then we can kind of get him up the beach and prep him for the wonderful lady that comes in and puts the satellite tag on the male. So it's a tough thing to do. You're hitting the jackpot if you're able to get it. Yeah. So all right. And then just a little bit about my stuff I do with loggerhead sea turtle diet. You can kind of see here organizing of, we go out on necropsy trips, remove the gastrointestinal. We take the gastrointestinal tract. FWC does these necropsies, and then we empty them and put out all the bits, and we measure, weigh, and kind of calculate how many they ate. There in the bottom right corner is a lot of stone crab and snail, things like that. And then health condition, in the middle there we have kind of different levels of muscle and fat atrophy. On the left there, the 4, that's a lot of fat, a lot of subcutaneous fat. So that's a healthy turtle. And then as it goes to the right, we see kind of decrease. To kind of see, I was trying to see if sea turtles that were, there's any correlation with a different diet, eating smaller gastropods, smaller bivalves versus the big juicy ones, if there's any different in the health of the turtle there. Thank you to Mandy Morgan and all you guys here at the Tarflower chapter for having me. Thank you to Katrina Phillips for helping me with some slides and lovely maps. And then all the photos we were able to get were taken by everybody in the group, so thank you guys, and there we go.